so that they will be of good standing with the Allied Health Professions Council. Like I said yesterday, we organize CPD every year because we have a lot of students as Advanced Global College who have completed their school and who are in school doing top-ups and need to renew their licenses with the council. So we have not also limited it to our graduates only. If you have graduated from any other institution or any school, so far as you are a medical laboratory professional, you can join our CPD program. We make sure that at the end of the CPD, you learn something. It is not just for you to get your points and get your license. No, it is a continuous professional development. To develop professionally, you should have learned something. So we make it a point that at the end of the day, at least, you are able to learn something. So we are continuing with our lesson today. And then I will urge, like I did yesterday, that please, if you have any question, if anything crosses your mind during the course of the presentation, note it down. This is a virtual meeting. And for that matter, the facilitator may not have the opportunity of interacting with you during the course of his delivery. But as soon as he is done, he's going to give an opportunity for anyone who has any uncleared point or any question, so that we all benefit from that. Also, because it is a virtual learning platform, I will urge that we mute our microphones and only put them on as and when it is necessary for us to do so in order to talk. We should also put our videos off, because you may be at a vicinity where there are videos that are or images that are not supposed to be shared. But as long as your video is on, such pictures or pictorial materials will be shared to people and stuff. So please, let's make sure that our microphones are on mute and our videos are equally on mute. As and when there is a need to talk, you can put it on and we interact. Our lecturer or our facilitator for today is no less a person than our own Dr. Essien. Dr. Essien has been our regular facilitator for this program. So those of you who have been with us over the years must be very familiar with him. I wish you all the best. I will come in again for the closing remarks. Thank you very much. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you very much, Alhaji. And thank you very much, colleagues. Good evening once again. Permit me to share my screen with you. So we take it from there. All right. I believe you can all hear me. And so today I'm going to be talking about something that has been a border, particularly when it comes to the healthcare setting, which has to do with how we communicate with our patients, how patients receive information from us, what they do with the information that they receive from us, and how that influences the outcome of the services that we render to our patients and our clients. I am sure you would agree with me that depending on the sort of communication you have between yourself and then your client or your patient, it may influence their decision-making process. And that decision-making process may also influence your work. And then it may also influence the choice of reagent, equipment, and other things. And more importantly, the outcome of your work, which would either help the patient or would worsen the patient's situation. And so clinical communication is very important. And it's an essential component in a clinical setting where it happens not just between us and our patients, but again, also between us and then other members of the healthcare team. So we're looking at how we communicate with other colleagues, from the nurses to the doctors, to the other allied healthcare workers, to the orderlies as well. As I mentioned earlier on, it improves patient outcomes, because if you instruct the patient that do not eat before you come for this test, and they do not understand or comprehend the fact that you said they shouldn't eat, and not just that, you're just saying that they should eat only bread and probably take tea and not Banku or TZ, then you may not be communicating effectively. And so the outcomes of that encounter may be worrying. Again, good clinical communication reduces a lot of errors. You would agree with me that if you look at the 3 stages of testing, be it the pre-analytic phase, the analytic phase, and the post-analytic phase, the bulk of the communication that we have as laboratory scientists is during the pre-analytic phase. Now, it is during that phase that we prepare patients. It is during that phase that we collect samples. It is during that phase that we process samples. Now, you would agree with me that during your patient preparation, where you are communicating with your patient, where you're telling your patient or your client what you want from them, what they are supposed to produce, what they are not supposed to produce, how they are supposed to collect the sample, the things they're supposed to engage in before meeting you, and things like that. You would agree with me that if there is a shortfall in that process, in that procedure, it definitely would have a very huge impact on whatever analytical processes that you engage in. If there's a shortfall in that process, it would influence all the outcomes of the analytic process that would reflect in the post-analytical process. And so you can look at effective communication as the number 1 thing that is needed for you and I to generate excellent results without blemish. You can look at a clinical communication as the utmost thing that you and I need to know, that you and I need to improve upon, that you and I need to be more acquainted with, so that we can reduce errors that will lead to giving of wrong results because the patient did not procure the right sample, because the patient did not understand, and so they did the wrong thing before they came to the lab. So it is important that we underscore the need for effective communication. Now, this would require a number of skills. Communication can be written. So in between you and your colleagues in the lab, between you and then probably some other department, between you and the physician, whatever you write communicates a certain language. Now, that written communication would carry a certain message that would require either an interpretation, an action, or that would require that someone refrains from doing something because they will end up hurting another person. It includes active listening. It includes making eye contact, amongst many others. But one of the things that is also important for us to understand is that sometimes, depending on our body language, how we react to certain things, how we approach certain things, we send certain signals that are messages that our colleagues, our clients, the people we work with, would read that body language and understand and say that, oh, okay, so this is what he means. Oh, okay, that is what he means. We call these non-verbal communications. Sometimes mere facial expressions how you frown your face, how you're smiling, how confident you are, tells the patient, the client, your colleague, the other worker, what exactly you intend saying through that action. One of the things that we also need to draw our attention to when it comes to communication is the issue of cultural awareness. I'll talk about all of these things into details, but I just want to touch on a few of them before we proceed. We need to be culturally aware of our environment. We need to be culturally aware of the things that we can say and the things that we cannot say in a certain area, in a certain jurisdiction. And as we move along, I'll share some examples with you. I'll share some experiences with you on how culture also influences our communication with our clients and even amongst ourselves as colleagues. You cannot talk about communication and not mention personal connections as well. Sometimes you need to identify with people. You need to be compassionate. You need to understand their grief. You need to understand the fact that they are afraid that they will die, and that is why they have come. And because of that, you're communicating with them in a certain way that will carry out a certain message that would give them that necessary reassurance and trust. The importance of effective communication in clinical care is that quality patient care basically relies on clear and concise communication between you, the professional, and then the patient. Now, I don't know how many of us know this, but again, our laws as a country, and if you look at our criminal code and criminal proceedings, our laws are very explicit on clinical communication. If you look at section 14, A, B, and C, where it talks about consent, it says if you communicate with someone and they do not understand what you said, and they misunderstood what you said because the information was not presented well, that consent is null and void. So you may talk to your patient. You can talk to your patient. If your patient does not understand what you say, because you probably use a language that the patient does not understand, and the patient goes to do something else, the law says that that decision to do that thing by that patient is null and void. So communication would have to be very clear and very concise. And one of the things I usually would say in a lot of my discourse when it comes to clinical communication is to reaffirm the fact that we all need to learn a second language apart from our mother tongue. If you find yourself working in an area and there's a language that dominates, you should make the effort to try or attempt to speak and understand the language. I am sure you agree with me that if you identify with people's languages, they are very comfortable and they easily would want to talk to you, they want to trust you, and they want to share their medical information with you. So effective clinical communication breeds trust, which is also the number one tenet and the number one factor that underscores that patient-practitioner relationship. For us to have that practitioner-patient relationship, there needs to be trust. The patient needs to trust what you're saying. They need to trust the information you're giving them. You also need to trust the information they're giving you because you're asking questions, they are providing answers, and this trust would work in both ways. If they don't trust you, the practitioner, they will tell you other things other than the things that you're supposed to know. And when that happens, you realize that it influences the way you practice, and it may also underscore the need for a review of the entire process And to a large extent, it may even call into question the abilities of the individual and your abilities as a practitioner as well. Trust in clinical care is very important. Every patient is afraid that they will die. And the moment they come to you and you start talking to them and they understand what you're saying and you're communicating well in a concise and a clear manner, they trust the information, they act on the information you're giving them because they want to get better. Effective communication also fosters collaboration between us and our clients. But here, importantly, I think my emphasis would be on the collaboration between us and then the other healthcare staff. I know how we have complained so much about physicians not writing legibly, and so sometimes the request comes, you don't see what they mean. You don't know whether it is 16 years or 6 years or 11 years. And so you don't know how to even report. You don't know whether it is male or female until you see the client or the patient. And so we've complained about so many things. And I'm happy that today we're going to talk about digital communication and how it has helped solve some of these issues. But you also agree with me that there are lab reports that have been submitted that usually the other healthcare professionals would call the lab and ask, hello, what did you write? I can't see. Is it no MP seen or 40 MP seen? So it is 40. And the 40 looks like a no. And then there are exchanges. And then there are disagreements because of the way we have communicated results, because of the way the physician has communicated to us the investigations that we should do. If that communication is effective, it enhances collaboration between us and the other team members. Remember, healthcare delivery is teamwork. It ensures that the information we are exchanging with regards to our patients is accurate. Because you see, the doctor would rely on whatever information you're giving him or her to complete his or her diagnosis. That diagnosis would have to go to another person based on your information. So it goes to the pharmacist. The pharmacist will look at the prescriptions and then disperse the medications. Based on the information that you have exchanged with the doctor, the patient may go for an injection or may go for another procedure. So if that communication is not effective, if it is marred by other things, then you realize that that inaccuracy in information may lead to a number of things that may be disadvantageous to the patient. Now, I have my first case on the slide, and I want this to be very participatory. So on your screens, I have my first case. I'm going to read out the case. Now I'm going to ask you to tell not just me, but I want us to discuss. What do you think is wrong with this approach by Dr. Jason? So Dr. Jason, an experienced and skilled surgeon, was about to finish night duty in a medium-sized community hospital. Whilst he was prepping to finish, a young woman was brought in by her mother, who leaves immediately after telling the intake nurse that she has to look after her other children. The patient is bleeding vaginally and is in a great deal of pain. So Dr. Jason decides to examine her and then concludes that she has had either a miscarriage or a self-induced abortion. He does a quick dilation and curettage and tells the nurse to ask the patient whether she can afford to stay in the hospital until it is safe for her to be discharged. Now, Dr. Quintin comes in to replace Dr. Jason, who actually goes home without having spoken to the patient, nor to Dr. Quintin. My colleagues, in the next 5 or so minutes, I want us to interrogate this. What do you think is wrong with this approach in terms of communication? You can just put up your hand, we would unmute you, and then we can discuss together. What do you think is wrong? Anybody wants to share with us? Hello, my people. Let me hear from you. Hello, are we there? I am alone.
No, sir, you are not alone. You are there.
Thank you very much. Let me hear from you, my brother.
Yes. Please, I'm Oforike Asempa.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think the first doctor should have handed over to the nurses so that in case of anything, they can explain it to the new doctor who just came.
Okay. But is that supposed to be the procedure?
No, sir.
So what do you think is lacking here in terms of communication? Oh, not just you alone. Any of us. I want us to note. I mean, you are 100% correct.
Yes.
You are 100% correct. They should have handed over properly. Yes, Philip.
Yeah.
Philip, what do you think? Philip Barnes, you can unmute.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I think Dr. Jason did not do any scan to confirm whether it is an abortion or it is infection that caused the bleeding. That's the first one. And the second one, Dr. Jason did not leave any note for the next doctor to know what is happening to the patient.
Great. So you have mentioned two things here. He didn't leave any handing over note. He didn't also do any investigation. He concluded.
Yeah, just go on.
Yeah. Any other? There are so many things here on communication, effective communication. Any other person wants to share their view? Yes, Solomon. We'll take Solomon and
Yes,
then we'll
sir.
take Alima too. Yes.
Okay. Prof, looking at the case, I think the first thing lacking in the case is the doctor-patient communication. The first doctor did not communicate with the patient to know what exactly was wrong with her.
I don't know, Solomon, we are
presumptuously-
struggling to hear you.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, Solomon, yes, we can hear you now.
I was saying that looking at the statement, the first thing lacking is that the first doctor did not communicate well with the patient before concluding that it was a miscarriage or self-induced abortion. And so he could not leave behind a proper handing over note for the next doctor.
Okay, that's awesome. That's great. That's great. That's great. Alimatu.
Yeah, that is what my brother just said. I think communication between patient and the doctor is not observed. And so for that matter, the first doctor couldn't put any notes or explain it further to the next doctor to know what is actually wrong with the patient. I think if he had spoken well with the patient, he will know more and will be able to also tell the next doctor exactly what is happening to the patient. That is
Great.
my opinion.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, colleagues, you all would agree with me that this case draws our mind to how we usually would practice medicine, thinking that the next person should know by default whatever is happening. The fact that we've taken this sample and we put it here, by default, it means that this and that has happened. What is really important in this case is about the practitioner-patient communication and then the practitioner-practitioner communication. You will all have excellently espoused your understanding of what communication is. So I'm so happy that we have been able to identify the gaps and the lapses. The doctor could have spoken with the patient. And even so, when he was done, instead of asking the nurse to ask the patient if she could afford to stay in the hospital until it's safe for her to be discharged, that was his duty. He was supposed to have done that. Now, if you are a physician and you are handing over, you hand over to another physician, you usually do not hand over to a nurse. So again, it is one of the things. So for instance, if you went for night shift and then you waited for the guy to take over from you in the morning and he wasn't coming, my question to you would be, would you hand over to the cleaner or the orderly in the lab? If the answer is a no, then you would agree with me also that there was something wrong in the handing over process. So you realize that Dr. Jason lacked the characteristics of effective communication. He did not speak with the patient. He did not speak with his colleague doctor, but rather ask a nurse to talk to the patient if she will be safe for her to be discharged. So you realize that if we do not communicate well, we may be even creating problems between us and our colleagues at the workplace. Because a number of the things that we will do would actually affect the harmony and the relationship between us and our colleagues. There are several barriers to clinical communication. And these barriers usually would impede effective communication. And they include a number of things. One of them is language. The other one is hierarchy, time constraints, and sometimes information overload. I'm going to break all of this down one into the other. And then we can understand how each of these barriers contribute to lack of effective clinical communication. I gave you a sneak peek earlier on about language, how important it is to communicate in someone's language so they can clearly understand what instructions you're giving them, so they can do exactly what you're asking them to do. And then more importantly, they can also be able to give you the right response so you can also proceed and do the right test and generate the right outcomes. So before I come to the individual obstacles, I just want to mention the fact that effective communication is very central and cannot be delegated to another person. You know how sometimes when we're communicating and we have interpreters, and then the interpreters would have to interpret whatever we say to the patient or client. Those of you who go to the churches and sometimes at the mosque, you understand. The interpreter is either adding onto the information or is subtracting from the information. They usually would garnish it nicely or summarize it inappropriately. So you realize that for communication to be effective, you need to reduce the layer through which the information goes through. If one information passes through 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, 4 layers, 5 layers, before it gets to its destination, the probability that that information will be distorted is very high. And that is how come a lot of the times when we communicate with our patients and they don't understand, they go and come back, and then they do the very opposite of the things we've asked them not to do. A lot of the essential diagnostic information arises from our encounter with our patients, when we're talking to them, when we're interviewing them, when we're giving them instructions. And so you, the practitioner, also needs a very good interpersonal skill. And sometimes you need to go out of your way to communicate well. And it is no fluke that now, in the curriculum that we are seeing at the training institutions, we are asking that we even include French. We're asking that we include sign language. So that if you meet a patient or a client who, by any means, has challenges to the normal communication or to the way you communicate, let me put it that way, then you should be able to communicate with that client or that patient in another way that he or she may be able to understand. So you need a lot of interpersonal skills. And these interpersonal skills need to technically be able to carry the information to the client the way it is supposed to. And once that happens, then it would largely also help you to get the necessary feedback from the client. And so you would have good patient satisfaction, and it would positively influence the health outcome. How do we communicate? We start off by active listening. There are some of us, we talk, we don't listen. When even we are communicating amongst ourselves as colleagues at the workplace, as staff, we're communicating with other colleagues. We do all the talking, we speak and speak and speak and speak and speak and speak without listening. Every good communicator would listen more and speak less. Sometimes we assume that we know what the person wants to say. So by the time they start, we end the statement for them, and then we cut them short. No. If you do that to your patients, they may not trust you. They may not open up to give you the information that you need. You need to also maintain good eye contact. Look the patient in the face. Don't be talking to your client or your colleague and be looking somewhere else. When you do that, it shows lack of confidence. Anytime you're talking to somebody and you're looking somewhere else, it clearly shows lack of confidence. You need to maintain eye contact with the person. Yes, sometimes it is uncomfortable, so you may want to flip, look side, look left, maybe look up or down, but you should make sure you make eye contact, because it is the only way you can read the person's body language. It is the only way you can interrogate whether what you're saying is being understood or not. Earlier on, I talked about the non-verbal communication. It falls under the eye contact, then the reading of the body language. In the clinic, a lot of the things that we do, a lot of the communications that we do are geared towards the non-verbal communications, especially when it comes to our clients. Amongst ourselves, amongst other healthcare workers, most of the communications are either verbal or they are written. So it is important that we understand these features such that when we are communicating with people, especially when it comes to verbal communications, we're doing it such that we're listening so we can give the right answers at the right time. We're maintaining eye contact so that we can tell. I mean, sometimes when people are talking to you and you look them in the face and they are lying, you get to know. Read the body languages and then tell whether your client is saying the right thing or not. What are some of the barriers? What I've done is to categorize the barriers to effective communication into 3. So we'll look at the clinical setting barrier. Then we'll look at the patient setting barrier. And then we'll look at us, the practitioner, setting barrier. The clinical setting barrier, which could hamper communication between us and our clients, can be dependent on so many things. How accessible the hospital facility is, how accessible the clinic is, how accessible the laboratory is. I remember I once visited a lab in one of the regions. And to enter the lab, I am not tall. I'm not very tall. I think I'm a little 5'8", 5'9", thereabout. 5'7", 5'8", yeah. But I had to bend before I could enter into the lab. The doorpost of the entrance to the lab was so short. So then I asked myself, if a patient is coming to this lab, are we expecting all the patients who are probably of my height and above to bend before they will be able to enter the lab? If I came to a place like that, I wouldn't be comfortable communicating. I wouldn't be comfortable talking to you. So accessibility is very, very important. Thankfully now, the laws allows us, and HEFRA is supposed to enforce this, to make sure that our facilities are accessible to even other brothers and sisters of us who are physically challenged. Because all of this influences how comfortable the person would be and how effectively they will communicate with you. At the workplace, one of the things that can be a barrier to communication, effective communication, is the attitude of staff. There are some staff that are very obnoxious. They are very snobbish. When you are talking to them, the first thing they will do is to look at you from head to toe. Sometimes they are eating their meat pie and drinking their Coke. And then you are talking to them, they will look at you from head to toe and ask you, what are you saying? Yes, what is it? Who are you? Who are you looking for? In a lot of instances, the moment you begin to treat people like this, you realize that they quail back. They don't want to talk again. They don't want to say anything again. They don't want to communicate again. The attitude of staff. You're talking to somebody, you're shouting on top of your voice, you're commanding the person with no out of respect. That person may not want to contribute to the communication process. The environment Can you hear me? I think my network went off, but it's back now.
Yes, you can hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Great. The hospital is such that you could walk through the hospital and there was an exit door in one of the wards to lead to a road to the market. I was like, oh my God, how was this place accredited to be a health facility? The environment was not secured. Somebody could just walk and come and sit in front of the lab because they are tired and there's some shade there. And you'd have to go and tell them that, oh, you leave this place, leave this place. You are not supposed to be sitting here. If your client comes to an environment like that, you know that definitely I wouldn't be talking about my ailment, because I don't know if someone would be passing and they will hear. And the next moment they will go and tell somebody, or they will go and tell other people. No. Sometimes the waiting area, one of the things that I have said over and again is how sometimes noisy the TV sets that we have in our facilities are. Someone has a thrombin headache. They've come, they are in the queue, they are waiting for their vitals to be checked, so they take them to the consulting room. And the TV is so loud. And you're asking yourself, how is this possible? The waiting area is dirty. The place is overcrowded. The person sitting on the pew or on the bench is so close to where they are checking the vitals, such that they can hear every question that you are being asked, and every answer that you're providing, they can hear. So the moment you get out, you say, hey, Papa, we say now, yeah, Papa, this man, he's sick, Papa. Solomon, let me hear from you, sir. Solomon, please unmute and let me hear from you.
Yes, sir. Please, regarding the communication.
Please go ahead. We are listening.
Okay. Just like you were saying, I think that there are times you go to certain facilities and you look at the environment around, clients or patients coming in there are not really comfortable sitting there to be interrogated.
Hello, Solomon.
Hello.
Hello, Solomon.
Yes, sir.
We can barely hear you. Please come again.
I was saying that regarding the communication, the health environment.
Yes.
There are times you go to certain facilities and realize that the front or the entrance of the facility is not that spacious to contain the clients coming at a time. So sometimes you face the challenge of clients being crowded and they begin to complain and the place is noisy and all that. So I don't know, in cases like that, how do you manage the noise and the congestion?
So largely, you may have to think, if you know that this is the traffic that you're drawing to your place, you may have to think of expanding the waiting area to contain the clients. That is number one. Number two, you probably may have to look for a way of decongesting the place. So maybe you can run some of the cases on clinic days where the patients will come on certain days. That is an approach that some people have used. Number three, you could also look at the possibility of creating some other outpatient units if you have space within the environment. So that when the patients come, instead of the single outpatient unit, you have about 2 or 3 of them to ease the congestion and then the noise. Because you see, the moment the people become agitated, by the time they get to you, when you're asking them questions, they are even tired. They don't even want to talk.
Yes, sir.
So these are some of the things that you can do as remedies to mitigate some of these things.
Okay. Thanks so much, Prof.
You're welcome, sir. And this leads to the next thing I want to talk about, the nature of the lab or the consulting room or the ward. I once sat in a consulting room and I could hear everything the doctor and then the patient were discussing in the next consulting room. Then I was asking myself, once I am able to hear the patient and the doctor, it means that when I also speak, they can also hear me and my doctor. Then I'll better wait. If the patient leaves, then I speak to my doctor. But then you know that is also not possible because there may be other clients that are also waiting. And so I only told the doctor that, I think that I would have to come back because I'm not comfortable. He said everything. I said, no, I wasn't comfortable. and I left. And later on, other people who visited the facility also complained about the nature of the consulting room. So 2 people went to see 2 different physicians. When they got out, each of them heard what the other person said about themselves. They didn't want their medical information to be out there. So you realize that, especially where we have the big rooms that we have put the benches and then we have demarcated the labs just by the benches. So this corner is hematology, this corner is phlebotomy, this corner is clinical chemistry, this corner is microbiology, and then all of us are in that one space. One of the challenges that you have in a space like that when clients come is when you're asking them questions and their willingness to answer the questions or their reluctance. If the environment is not conducive, people won't talk, people won't communicate. If the environment is uncomfortable, people won't communicate. If I can sit somewhere and speak and then everybody else can hear me, then what is the point? There's a teaching hospital in Ghana, and there are sample collection units, the phlebotomy unit, and where they do the patient registration is so open that I am wondering how patients become comfortable when they sit there and they are answering all the questions that they are asking them about themselves. In some places, people use screen barriers. In some places, people use screen barriers between them and then the patient. And these screen barriers may only form a screen, but you could obviously hear whatever is being discussed between the patient and then the practitioner. These are a few of the things, these are a few of the obstacles to communication that are clinical setting related. So if you take the clinical setting, there are a number of things, right from the accessibility issues to the attitude of the staff, to the environment, how comfortable the environment is and all of that would eventually affect how people communicate. Now, if I have to communicate something to a client, or if I have to communicate something to a colleague, and the environment is uncomfortable, obviously I wouldn't be able to do that. And so these are some of the barriers to effective communication. The next one is the practitioner-centered barrier or obstacles. You know, the way our lifestyles and the way we are brought up influences the way we communicate. Our culture and our religion influences the way we communicate. Recently, I participated in a case where there's a chief who works under a female. So the chief is a technical officer. Then the boss, who is a principal medical lab scientist, is a female. Now, this chief, per his tradition and customs, is not supposed to take instructions from a female. And he always wants to communicate with his boss as if the boss is his subordinate. So his language is very instructive. You do this, do that. The woman says, no, you can't talk to me like that. I'm your boss. And when the boss asks that he does something, he finds it difficult to do because of his culture. And so it became a problem at the workplace. They were not communicating well. It got to a point they were sending emails, they were sending WhatsApp messages, and the problem continued. So to a time where he felt like, he had to protect his chieftaincy and his tool. So he would come to work and then would not do anything until his salary was blocked. Then we had to go into arbitration. And when we went into arbitration, we had to talk about this extensively. For him to understand that at the workplace, you need to learn how to communicate. Yes, you may be a chief in your village, you may be a chief in your hometown. But once you move from that jurisdiction and come to the work environment, and there's someone, the person may be younger than you, the person may be someone of the opposite gender. You need to learn how to communicate with these people. I know in the Quran and then the Hadith, it teaches that men are the head of the house. And so people who are strong religious people would always want to act same way. So they cannot take instructions from people. You can't even talk to them. And so sometimes between us and even the patient or the client, we have this difficulty. The ladies will bear with me. If you're a female and some of your clients come and you're talking to them, the way they behave, you ask yourself so many questions. Other people have unresolved emotional content and psychological content. They had some fight with someone in the past. They had some misunderstanding with someone in the past. It is still there. They are hurting about it. Maybe at the workplace, someone did something at the work environment and you did not like it. But somehow, somewhere, anytime the rosters come out, you find you and that person on duty. You have some psychological unresolved issues, some emotional unresolved issues. Maybe you woke up in the morning, you are coming to work. Your husband says, I have no money. So you got angry. So emotionally, you have been angry the whole day. It would affect the way you communicate, my brother, my sister. You have this psychological unresolved issues about how that guy broke your heart, how that lady broke your heart. And the moment you see a name that resembles that same name, you say, these people again. Kai. I don't want to have anything to do with a Dinah. I don't want to have anything to do with a Samuel. Oh, that guy called Prince, the way he treated me. I hate people called Prince and Kwame and Kwesi and Ama and Akosia. You'd agree with me that these things would hamper the way you communicate with your clients. One of the things I've also realized is when we don't pay attention to people's emotional content. I once chanced upon someone who was talking to a client and the client was refusing to answer because this person threatened the client that they would die if they don't agree to go through a certain procedure. Not knowing the client had just lost somebody, a relation, from the same illness. So I have headache. My brother has headache. And then that morning he died. And I come and I'm crying. And then you are telling me also that the headache is going to kill me. I'm not sure how I'm going to talk to you under a circumstance like that. Colleagues, we need to pay attention to our environment. One of the things that is very, very important as an ethical virtue, which a lot of us should strive to inculcate in ourselves, is a virtue of discernment. How to discern the times, the seasons, and the moments before you say what you want to say or act the way you want to act. We need to pay attention to people's emotional content. I told you that a lot of our patients, or all of them, are afraid that they will die. If they are not afraid, they won't come. They're only coming to the hospital because they are afraid. So they have subconscious anxieties. They are really scared. lack of training could be another obstacle, could be a barrier. And I'm happy that Alhaji, in his opening remarks, indicated that, look, it is important that we do these things. I'm not comfortable when people just register for CPDs and then some even don't listen, some even don't participate because they know at the end of the day, I'm getting my point. No. Some of these things we're talking about, we know them already, but it is good. It is excellent that we occasionally would meet together and then as a team, we reflect upon these things. We share new ideas. And that is what this whole concept of CPD is about. So people who lack training may not communicate effectively. People who think that they know it all, or they are organized by themselves, they don't have any role models. They don't have anyone they are looking up to. They think that they have arrived. After all, I am that I am. Whatever I do, nobody cares. Usually people like that are very deficient when it comes to communication. You know, sometimes one of the things that is also makes it difficult is when people do not understand that or do not appreciate that they are wrong when you point them to the wrong. I've met a couple of people who find it difficult to say please, especially to the younger ones. And so when they see you talk to someone younger and then you say please, then they ask you, but why are you being polite? The person is young. He's the one who is supposed to be saying please to you, not the other way around. So they may do certain things and then you prompt them that no, this is not right. You should have done it this way. You could have done it this way. This would have been better. They don't see anything wrong with what they have done. Such people do not even apologize for the wrongs they do. They're always right. A lot of practitioners are like that. Or I had a first class, so you can't tell me what to do. So before you even start talking, they have concluded. Such people usually will lack insights into the deficiencies of their communication and so will not communicate effectively. Sometimes misapprehensions would also cause people not to communicate properly. They are not so sure about something. I remember there was this scenario, a Confanochi, some time back where a physician, like one of the senior doctors, walked into the lab and then asked that who did this report? I want to talk to the person who did this report. Then the young man got up and said that, sir, if there's any problem with the report, I'll repeat it. And the physician was sad because he was actually there to commend the person for doing a good job. But this person did not communicate well. If it was out of fear, out of whatever. You know, sometimes when you don't believe in yourself, when you don't believe that you are capable, you find it difficult to communicate. I say this a lot of the times that, look, I think the bulk of my friends are physicians. They respect me so well because I think I communicate well with them. They know their boundaries. I also know my boundaries. So when I'm saying the things I have to say, I'm saying them very confident because I know what I'm talking about. But some of these misapprehensions usually would make us waver. See, the person wants to talk and then the voice is shaking and things like that. No, it won't allow you to communicate effectively. Then we'll come to the patient-related barriers. One of the most common ones is age. And I remember when I was a young intern in one of the hospitals in Ashanti region, I learned my very first lesson when it comes to practitioner-patient relationship, communication, and age. There was an elderly woman we met at the facility. We just mentioned her name just like that. We just mentioned her name just like that. She never responded. Until one of us came and said, look, the person is 85 years. Why are you mentioning her name like that? Add Oba Penny. When we added Oba Penny, she responded. And, you know, bizarrely, we thought it was funny, so we were laughing. Then she addressed us in impeccable British English to school us about culture, which I mentioned earlier on. Understanding the culture of the environment, and then considering age and communication. There are things that you tell a teenager. You can't tell a child the same thing. There's a way you speak to an adult that will make the adult understand, which is different from the way you would communicate the same information to a child. So age differences would confer different forms of communication and different approaches to communication. So if you don't pay attention to age, that is when you talk to somebody and then they will be reluctant to answer the questions because you are not showing any respect. I am as old as your grandmother or your grandfather, and you are talking to me as if I am your son. Well, then you have to answer the questions yourself. So they will just be sitting there and looking at you. I talked about gender a bit earlier, where because we think women belong to the vulnerable group, the men are domineering, and then they accede all the power to themselves and see the women as subservient to them. So when you go to the hospital and then you are a woman and you are talking to a man, they look down upon you. When you go to the hospital and you are a woman and the man is talking to you, they want to instruct you, do this, sit down, and things like that, as if they were your parents. Obviously, that would influence how you communicate. You know how we don't want to touch or see certain patients. So sometimes we'll call colleagues, hey, Alex, your HIV woman is coming on me, you know, I won't touch her sample. Come and attend to her. Hey, Kojo, come. Your man is coming on. Today your man will come. Say, which man? Oh, the one that has the big sore, the diabetic foot ulcer. I had that man. Me, you know that when he comes, Charlie, when I attend to him, go and attend to him. Now, if people realize that you are discriminating against them in terms of gender, in terms of their illness, in terms of social class, they obviously will not communicate with you effectively. I've mentioned language barriers. One of the major ones. I have a colleague I teach with in the university who is Ga, and he always remarks about when he had to go and work in the Volta region. He said he noticed at some point that the interpreter would either add to the information or take away from the information. Then he told himself that no, he would have to learn how to speak the local language. So he learned. And he said, when the clients come, they open up, they are so happy, and they rather would want to teach him new terminologies and things like that so he could use them in his work. The communication was effective. Go and do this, they will do it. Go and do that, they will do that. If they don't understand something, they are asking. Language is one major barrier that we all need to look at. Unfortunately, you and I don't determine where we'll end up working. even if we so do determine, we do not determine the kinds of patients that we will attend to. So you may have a patient or a client who would come who needs to be spoken to in another language or in another form of language. If you're unable to do that, that effective communication is broken. I talked about emotional responses earlier. Intimidation. The client comes and then they are intimidating you, or you're intimidating the client. Obviously, that would influence how you communicate. People come and then you're embarrassing them by their sickness. You're calling them by their sickness. Hey, you got diabetes, you're welcome. So everybody turns around in the room and say, hey, oh, this is the diabetes man. You know, sometimes the way we do it unconsciously, say, so sometimes they say something about the patient and the patient is sitting there and then we all will tell you, say, Charlie, so this is the man you have been talking about. He say, hey, Papa, we've heard your name, pal. This guy has been talking about you. So he says you are very stubborn. You don't comply. It would affect the way you communicate. Sometimes we want to show people that we know, especially when we meet people from the opposite sex and they draw in line with whatever features we are expecting to see in the people we want to be with and things like that. They will begin to use some medical jargons to prove to them that we know. So you are asymptomatic. You are asymptomatic. Then they'll begin to use so many jargons. They'll begin to say things. They say, oh, you know, the hemolytic disease of the newborn. Sorry. Sorry, just give me a second. Let me get some water. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I'm back. I'm back. So people would use medical jargons and other things just to intimidate their clients, just to prove to their clients or their patients that they know better. And then in so doing, would influence the way they communicate. Colleagues, these are a few of the barriers to communication. The question is, what strategies can we use in improving clinical communication? The first one is to implement standardized communication tools. First one is to implement standardized communication tools. Every facility should set up a communication guideline and indicate how patients are to be communicated to, indicate how we're supposed to communicate with one another. If we are going to use electronic media to communicate, that should be very clear. That should be made clear. If we are going to use a PA system to communicate, that should be made clear. So whatever tools we agree on should be made clear and standardized. We should emphasize on active listening, as I indicated earlier on, and also promote interprofessional education. You see, if we don't do these things, sometimes in our own minds, we think that, oh, everything is okay, everything is sorted. But then we'll end up doing the wrong thing. One of the things that we need to do is to foster a supportive environment that drives communication. Create environments that are very enabling. If you have to put soundproofs in rooms, put soundproofs in your rooms, especially your consulting rooms, the areas where you have patient communications the most and things like that. Nobody should be eavesdropping on the corridors. It is like that. People should be able to understand the different cultures and apply same, especially in their communication. We respect our own. Our culture is our heritage. It is one of the things that drives the way we practice medicine. And so it will be important that you find yourself in a place and you're communicating in a very culturally humane way to improve upon the patient outcome. I remember I went to one of the villages and then we were asked to communicate in a certain way that I was never familiar with because of the person we're going to communicate with. And so our host took his time to explain to us the cultural benefits of that mode of communication. And I can tell you, my colleagues, when we got to the place and then we did exactly what we were told, they opened up, they gave us all the information that we needed. We also gave them the information that they needed. We came to a consensus, we agreed, and then we departed. In the clinic, it is the same way. If you find yourself in a certain environment, you need to understand the environment. You need to understand the way of life of the people, and you need to speak or act accordingly. You can't be making hand gestures with your left hand if you're talking to someone who is older than you. Even for someone who is younger than you, our culture does not permit that. I mean, in present day, yes, why not? I don't have a problem in my class, people putting up their left hand and other things. Yes. But then I always remind the students that, and I always remind myself that depending on where you find yourself, there are things you can do and there are things you cannot do. How do we use technology for communication? Thankfully, now we have moved to the technological world. We're digitizing healthcare. And so now we have the LIMS, and the IT guys are helping a lot. Hopefully, the government or the ministry wants that by 2030, all facilities across the country should be hooked on to the electronic health system. In embracing these innovative technologies, we need to also be very mindful of its challenges, especially third-party challenges, third-party uses, and things like that. I was in a facility about 2 months ago, and we're having a conversation on data security and things. And then one of the units said that, look, we are not sure that our data is secured because when a patient gets to my unit and I query, I am able to see everything that was done from the OPD, and I'm not supposed to see that. All I'm supposed to see is why the patient or the client is with me and what I need to do. And we're like, that must be a breach of confidentiality. And we all agreed that utilizing technology is good because now with the electronic health record system, it makes it easier for us. We're saving the environment. We don't need to do all those documentations. You can just by a single click of a button, pull patient information, and you have everything, which is excellent. It is efficient, and I agree, but it has challenges. What we need to do is to make sure that we manage these challenges by restricting access, by restricting distribution, by restricting even usage of the information. So when the students come and they need information for their project work and things, you don't just get up and say, okay, go, this is the password, go and get it. No. It is our duty to give that information to the student the way they want it. So my people, yes, electronic health records have come in play. They are available, but we need to also be mindful in how to use them. The impact of effective clinical communication on patient outcomes have been outlined. One of them is that it ensures patient safety. It increases patient satisfaction. So when they go and they have a problem, they will come. If you communicate well with your people, say these people, when you go there, they will take their time and explain the thing to you, you understand. And you know, they are very nice, the way they talk to you, they give you all sort of encouragement and things. The patients are satisfied. When they are satisfied, they'll recommend other patients to come. It reduces medication errors. A lot of the errors in diagnosis and medication usually comes from us in the lab. And it begins, as I said earlier on, from the pre-analytic phase. So one of the most important impacts when it comes to effective communication is a reduction in medication errors. And once a lot of these things are done, the overall quality of patient care is improved. My recommendations are very simple. I think that we need to invest in ourselves. We need to invest in training programs that are focused on how to equip healthcare practitioners with communication skills. We need to engage in programs. We need to set up programs, short courses amongst many others on effective communication strategies. How to culturally communicate. How to empathize with patients. How to collaborate within the interdisciplinary teams at the hospital. We need a lot of training on some of these things. I've always maintained that if we communicate well between ourselves as healthcare professionals, the sort of problems that we are having now, we will not have them. Now, on this note, I want to leave us with 3 case studies. Hospital X, Clinic Y, and healthcare organization Z. Hospital X has enhanced clinical communication by implementing a digital communication platform, thereby reducing response times and improving care coordination amongst the staff. Clinic Y has also established interdisciplinary rounds. So in this case, the pharmacist, the nurse, the med lab scientist, the doctor, the imaging scientists, and all the other groups form part of the ward rounds, and they promote open dialogue and effective communication. And it is resulting in improved patient outcomes. Organization Z utilize simulation training to enhance communication skills among staff. So it has led to decreased medication errors and increased patient satisfaction. I want just 4 people to tell me which of these communication improvements they would want to see at their facility and why. Any 4 people can share with us? which of these communication strategies they think would best suit their facility and why they would select this communication strategy. Fuzeni, let's hear from you. Oh, he's gone off. Any other person? Anybody at all wants to share with us? Anybody wants to share with us which of these communication improvements they would want to see at their facility and why? Hello, my people, are you there?
Prof, you are around.
Okay. Or we'll leave that as food for thought. So you reflect on this. And then in our discussion tomorrow, we'll use that as our opening. I'll send the slides through Alaji. But colleagues, all what we are trying to say is that for patients to make good decisions that will reflect in the good outcomes that we're looking at, we need to communicate with them effectively. We need to be able to identify all the barriers of communication, and then we need to be able to improve upon those barriers. The ones that has to do with our person as individuals, the ones that has to do with us as practitioners, the ones that has to do with us as a facility. We need to make conscious efforts to improve upon such barriers so we can improve upon clinical communication. Let us also not forget that when we talk about effective clinical communication, we're not talking about only our clients. We're talking about even our colleagues in the same lab. We're talking about also other colleagues from different departments that are in the healthcare team. If you communicate well, the team will gel well, the team will work together beautifully, and then the outcomes would be very good. I want to say a very big thank you to all of you for making time to listen to me. I think I'll end here for today. If you have any questions, I'll take them. Alaji, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. Please, is there any question so that doctor can handle it before it goes? If you have any question, you can just put up your hand and you are mute and ask anything about what we have discussed today. Okay, so I think there's no question, Doc, because no one has expressed interest in asking. Thank you very much, Doctor.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much
for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So like I said, I will say again that registration is still open. If you have a friend or colleague who is yet to register, please let them know that this might be the last accredited CPD program. And we are on the 16th of December. So God willing, tomorrow we'll meet at the same time, same platform. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Merry Christmas.